NBC had a science fiction series on a while back. You probably remember it. It was called Star Trek.
Star Trek is a phenomenon that's inspired generations with its bold visions of the future. It's remembered for its memorable characters and groundbreaking ideas, but beyond the starships and space battles, the series is packed with hidden details, clever tricks, and behind-the-scenes secrets that many fans never realized. From reused props to subtle nods and in-jokes, the franchise is full of surprises waiting to be uncovered. Join us as we talk about things that fans never noticed about Star Trek. Number 15. The most difficult scene. Fans never notice these things about Star Trek, but they reveal some of the show's most powerful behind-the-scenes stories. Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Janice Rand in Star Trek, the original series, had a career marked by both triumph and trauma. Originally cast as a recurring character and possible love interest for Captain Kirk, she was abruptly written out of the show after just a few episodes. Years later, Whitney revealed she had been a victim of sexual assault by a studio executive around the time of her departure, something she believed contributed to her being let go. One of her most difficult scenes was in The Enemy Within, where an evil version of Kirk tries to assault Rand. Though deeply uncomfortable to film, she credited William Shatner for being respectful during that moment. After years of battling addiction, Whitney eventually returned to Star Trek in films and Voyager. Fans remember her for her strength and for saying, "Spock never needed me for my body. He needed me for my feelings," highlighting the quiet respect her character found in him. Number 14. Sabotaged by NBC Star Trek. The original series wasn't just cancelled, it was quietly sabotaged. After 2 seasons of growing popularity and a massive fan-led letter-writing campaign, NBC renewed the show for a 3rd season, but with a catch. The network slashed the budget by more than 60% and moved the show to the dreaded Friday 10 p.m. time slot, where viewership was guaranteed to drop. With so little money, writers were forced to reuse sets, limit special effects, and simplify scripts to fit whatever resources were available. The show's signature creativity suffered. Gene Roddenberry, frustrated with NBC's treatment, stepped back from the series entirely. While the network didn't cancel Star Trek outright, it's clear they set it up to fail. Many fans see this as a calculated move, appeasing the fan base with a renewal while ensuring the show wouldn't survive long. Ironically, the series became a cultural icon only after NBC let it die. Number 13. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy's complicated relationship. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy shared one of Star Trek's most iconic on-screen partnerships, but their real-life relationship was far more complex. Early on during the original series, the two weren't particularly close. Shatner, as the lead, reportedly felt threatened by Nimoy's rising popularity as Spock. Over time, however, mutual respect and shared experiences turned them into genuine friends. They attended conventions together, appeared in interviews, and supported each other through major life events. But their friendship took a painful turn in the final years of Nimoy's life. According to Shatner, Nimoy suddenly stopped speaking to him without explanation. Many believe it stemmed from Shatner using footage of Nimoy in his documentary, The Captains, without getting proper permission. Nimoy reportedly saw this as a betrayal and never reconciled with Shatner before his death in 2015. Shatner did not attend Nimoy's funeral, citing a charity commitment which drew public criticism. Still, he later expressed deep regret, saying he tried to make amends but never got the chance. In interviews and in his book, Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man, Shatner openly mourned the loss not just of a co-star, but of a complicated, cherished friend. Number 12. The Klingons' Belt Buckles. If you watched the episode Day of the Dove from Star Trek, the original series, you probably noticed the Klingons storming around in their usual grumpy, war-ready style. They had tough attitudes, slicked-back hair, and uniforms that screamed alien military. But did you ever really look at their belts? No, seriously. Take a closer look. What might seem like shiny, high-tech armor or a futuristic buckle is, in reality, something much simpler and way cheaper. It's bubble wrap. Yes, the same stuff you pop for fun when a package arrives. The Klingon belt buckles in this episode were actually made from regular old bubble wrap painted gold to make it look like advanced alien tech. Once you know this, it's almost impossible to unsee it. The bubbly texture is right there, catching the light just enough to give away its earthly origins. The props team, working with a tight budget and even tighter deadlines, had to get really creative, and honestly, it kind of worked. Most fans didn't notice it for decades. This wasn't a one-time slip either. In many episodes, items meant to look futuristic were made from household objects. Star Trek's crew reused costumes, flipped props upside down, or gave them a quick spray of metallic paint to sell the illusion. Isn't that wild? You're watching Klingons thinking they're decked out in alien gear, but really, they're just rocking gold-painted shipping supplies. Number 11. The Fesarius was made out of ping-pong balls. However, if you're surprised that the Klingons' belt buckles were made of bubble wrap, wait and see what they used to build one of the most iconic alien ships in Star Trek, the original series. In the episode, The Corbomite Maneuver, viewers were introduced to a mysterious and massive spherical spaceship called the Fesarius. This glowing vessel belonged to the powerful First Federation and was meant to look far more advanced than anything the crew of the Enterprise had ever seen. But the real secret, the Fesarius, was made almost entirely out of ping-pong balls. Yes, the model for this gigantic alien ship was covered in hundreds of ping-pong balls, many cut in half, glued to the surface, and painted to give the illusion of futuristic tech. The effect was strangely perfect. On the low-resolution televisions of the 1960s, the ping-pong balls gave the ship a smooth, glowing texture that felt high-tech and intimidating. The prop department didn't have a big Hollywood budget. They had to be clever, using anything they could find in hardware stores, toy aisles, and local markets. Ping-pong balls were cheap, lightweight, and easy to modify. When carefully arranged and lit from the right angles, they looked like clusters of alien sensors or energy emitters. What's amazing is how well the illusion held up. Fans watched in awe as the Fesarius hovered on screen, never realizing they were looking at painted sports equipment. It's another brilliant example of the show's creative problem-solving and the magic of old-school practical effects. Number 10. Leonard Nimoy introduced the Vulcan salute. When Star Trek, the original series, first aired, no one could have predicted that a simple hand gesture would become one of the most iconic images in science fiction. The Vulcan salute, paired with the phrase "Live long and prosper," was first seen in the episode Amok Time. It quickly became a powerful symbol of Vulcan culture and a universal sign of peace among fans. But what many people don't realize is that the salute wasn't part of the original script. It came straight from Leonard Nimoy's personal life. Nimoy, who played the legendary Mr. Spock, grew up in a close-knit Jewish community in the West End of Boston. As a child, he often attended services at an Orthodox synagogue. During one of these services, he witnessed a powerful moment that would stay with him forever. A group of men stood before the congregation chanting a traditional Hebrew blessing with their hands raised in a unique formation. The fingers split down the middle, forming a shape that would later become the Vulcan salute. Though the tradition was sacred, and his father told him not to look, young Leonard peeked. What he saw felt mystical, almost magical. That image stayed with him for decades. Years later, while filming Amok Time, Nimoy felt the Vulcan people needed a distinct greeting. So he suggested the salute from his childhood. The director agreed instantly, and television history was made. The fact that this now universal gesture came from such a personal and spiritual place is something many fans never knew. It wasn't just a sci-fi creation, it was a real blessing, handed down through tradition, reimagined in a galaxy far beyond our own. Number 9. Transporters were introduced. Because of the budget, Transformers might change shapes in other shows, but in Star Trek, it was the transporter that truly transformed the way science fiction looked. And it all happened because of money. And as we already mentioned, when the original Star Trek series was made in the 1960s, the budget was tight. The crew had big ideas, but very limited ways to bring those ideas to life. Showing spaceships landing on alien worlds every episode would have cost too much and taken too long to film. So, the team got creative. Instead of using expensive models and special effects to show a shuttle landing, they came up with something completely new. A machine that could beam people straight from the ship to the planet's surface. The transporter was born not from futuristic science, but from the need to save time and money. Early scripts called it an energy matter scrambler, or converter, and described a room-sized machine with strange glass and lights. It didn't look like anything in real life, and that was the point. It had to feel alien, advanced, and believable. The now famous sound and shimmering lights that came with beaming in and out helped make the effect memorable, even magical, for viewers. The very first Star Trek episode ever broadcast, The Man Trap, featured the transporter in action. It was a smart move. By showing the crew using this machine right away, the show could dive into the story without having to explain how they landed on the planet. Gene Roddenberry later said it actually helped the show tell faster, stronger stories. Number 8. Missing Middle Finger. James Doohan will always be remembered as Montgomery Scotty Scott, the brilliant and dependable chief engineer of the Enterprise. He was the one who kept the warp core humming and always managed to beam the crew to safety just in time. But there's something many Star Trek fans have never noticed. Doohan was missing his right middle finger. This wasn't a camera trick or part of the character. It was real. Long before he stepped aboard the Enterprise, James Doohan served in the Royal Canadian Artillery during World War II. On June 6, 1944, he landed on Juno Beach as part of the D-Day invasion. It was one of the most dangerous days of the war, and Doohan showed extraordinary courage. He took out 2 enemy snipers, guided his men through a minefield, and held his position as night fell. Then, in a tragic twist, James was accidentally shot by a fellow Allied soldier. He was hit 6 times, 4 bullets to his leg, 1 to his chest, miraculously stopped by a metal cigarette case, and 1 that tore through his hand. That final shot led to the loss of his right middle finger. Back in Hollywood, James worked hard to hide the injury on screen. He used clever camera angles, kept his hand out of frame, and sometimes wore a skin-colored glove with a prosthetic finger. Still, if you look closely, you can catch glimpses in episodes like The Trouble with Tribbles and The Lights of Zetar. Number 7. Shatner's name, larger than Nimoy's, in the opening credits. Most people don't watch the opening credits today, but if you go back and carefully look at the beginning of Star Trek, the original series, there's something a lot of fans missed. Right from the start, there was a quiet little detail in the credits that spoke volumes about what was going on behind the scenes. William Shatner's name was always bigger than Leonard Nimoy's, and not just by chance. It was actually written into a contract. In September 1966, during the production of Season 1, a studio memo stated that Leonard Nimoy's name must appear at only 75% the size of William Shatner's. That's right. There was a rule making sure Shatner's credit would always be larger and more prominent. At the time, Shatner had top billing as the show's lead, and the role of Captain Kirk was meant to be the central figure of the series. But something unexpected happened. Spock, the calm and logical Vulcan, played by Nimoy, quickly became a fan favorite. Viewers connected with Spock in ways no one anticipated. As Spock's popularity grew, tensions rose. Shatner reportedly wasn't thrilled with sharing the spotlight, and the credit size rules stayed in place throughout the series. Early episodes listed Shatner under starring William Shatner, while Nimoy's credit reads simply Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock. Later, also starring was added before Nimoy's name, a small nod to his growing importance, though his name remains smaller on screen. Number 6. The Aldebaran Whiskey Bottles. If you thought we were done with recycling capabilities in Star Trek, think again. One of the cleverest examples of prop repurposing shows up in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it's hidden in plain sight, right behind the bar in 10 Forward. Fans will remember Aldebaran whiskey as a rare and mysterious green drink served by Guinan and occasionally sipped by Captain Picard himself. It looked exotic and otherworldly, but the truth is a lot less cosmic. That glowing green liquor wasn't brewed in the Aldebaran system. It came from Tennessee. The bottles used on set were actually emptied George Dickel Tennessee Sour Mash whiskey bottles. The production team simply cleaned them out, poured in green dyed liquid, and added a futuristic label. Just like that, regular Earth whiskey became interstellar booze. This kind of creative reimagining was typical for the Star Trek props department. Working under budget and time constraints, the crew got used to transforming everyday objects into sci-fi icons. Romulan ale was just blue-colored water. Saurian brandy came in decorative glass decanters from local stores. Klingon blood wine often sat inside repurposed wine bottles, or even shampoo containers dressed up with wax seals and bold labels. The props team didn't stop at bottles either. Borg tools were sometimes made from dental picks or parts from model trains. Even dilithium crystals, one of the most crucial elements in the Star Trek universe, were often nothing more than molded plastic or resin pieces lit from below. Number 5. Uniform badges, uniforms. In Star Trek, the original series might all look similar at first glance: color-coded shirts, black pants, and that famous arrowhead badge. But look closer, and you'll spot something surprising that many fans never noticed. In the early days of the show, not every Starfleet crew wore the same insignia. That arrowhead, now known as the symbol of Starfleet itself, was once only for the crew of the USS Enterprise. During the 1960s, the idea was that each ship had its own unique badge. The Enterprise had the delta-shaped arrowhead, which became iconic thanks to characters like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. But if you look at episodes like The Doomsday Machine, you'll see a completely different design worn by Commodore Decker aboard the USS Constellation, a pretzel-like swirl that looks nothing like the Delta. And in The Omega Glory, the crew of the USS Exeter wears a rectangular badge with 2 horizontal lines. These details were easy to miss, especially on old TVs with low resolution, but they're right there for eagle-eyed viewers. It wasn't until Star Trek: The Motion Picture in 1979 that the arrowhead officially became the universal symbol for all of Starfleet. The story goes that the Enterprise's 5-year mission was so legendary, Starfleet adopted its badge as the standard for everyone. Over time, fans debated the badge differences. Some early comics and books even tried to explain them as department or mission-specific. But the truth is simpler. It was a design choice that changed over time and eventually became canon. Number 4. Some pipes were labeled GNDN. I'm sure almost none of you have watched the pipes running along the walls of the Enterprise. After all, they're just part of the background. Blink, and you'll miss them. But tucked away in the corridors and engineering rooms of Star Trek, the original series is one of the most legendary behind-the-scenes jokes in TV history. The GNDN pipes. If you look closely, you'll notice some of the pipes are labeled GNDN. At first, it sounds technical, like something to do with the ship systems, but it's not. GNDN stands for Goes Nowhere, Does Nothing. That's right. These pipes weren't connected to anything. They didn't carry air, power, or futuristic plasma. They were just pieces of plastic or tubing attached to the walls to make the set look busy and advanced. In reality, they were totally fake. The production team knew this, of course, and they had a great sense of humor about it. GNDN was a quiet joke among the set designers, a nod to how much of sci-fi is make-believe and movie magic. It became a little reward for anyone observant enough to notice. And it wasn't just the pipes. Many of the props on the show, like the famous tricorder, were also just clever designs with no function. Over time, GNDN became part of Star Trek lore, even making appearances in later shows and fan creations. Number 3. Hidden Easter eggs. Imagine how much time Star Trek The Next Generation fans have spent staring at the glowing ship diagram on the bridge or in engineering. The big, sleek display showing every deck of the USS Enterprise D. It looked like a high-tech Master Systems readout, always there in the background, lending realism to the scene. But what most fans never realized is that the diagram wasn't just for show. It was also full of hidden surprises. The detailed schematic, called the Master Systems display, was actually a giant printed decal, and the art design team, led by scenic artist Michael Okuda, had a little too much fun when creating it. Knowing that the TV resolution of the time was too low to reveal tiny details, they filled the ship's decks with Easter eggs, jokes, tributes, and odd little objects. Hidden within the ship layout were things you'd never expect to find on a starship. There was a Porsche, yes, a sports car, tucked away in the lower saucer section. There was also a silhouette of an old airplane, likely a nod to aviation history. Somewhere on the ship's decks, a duck quietly waddled while a mouse scurried nearby. The official Enterprise duck and ship's mouse were just part of the fun. Even more amusing was the tiny Nomad space probe from the original series placed as a visual homage. And most bizarre of all, a hamster on a treadmill jokingly presented as the true power source behind the warp core. These clever additions were never meant to be seen on screen, but in HD remasters and close-up photos, fans have spotted them at last. Number 2. All aliens speak English. Did you notice that everyone in Star Trek seems to speak perfect English, no matter what planet they're from? From Vulcans and Klingons to Ferengi and Bajorans, alien characters across the galaxy talk to each other without hesitation. It's one of those things that feels normal in the show until you stop and think about it. The reason within the Star Trek universe is the Universal Translator. This clever piece of technology is built into communicators, comm badges, and ship systems. It instantly translates alien languages in real time, making it possible for people from entirely different worlds to communicate as if they're all speaking the same language. It even adjusts for grammar, tone, and cultural meaning, at least most of the time. This isn't just a throwaway idea. The translator gets mentioned in many episodes across the series. In Deep Space Nine, the Ferengi have trouble without it in Little Green Men. In Enterprise, Hoshi Sato works to develop the early version of the device. And in the Next Generation episode, Darmok, we see its limits when it fails to interpret a language built entirely on metaphor and shared experience. Of course, in the real world, the actors were all speaking English for simplicity and to save time and money on production. That's where a bit of suspension of disbelief comes in. The translator is said to manipulate sounds so precisely that each person hears the other in their native language. It's also why their lips match the English words. Number 1. Money still exists in the Star Trek universe. Star Trek often paints a picture of a future where humanity has moved beyond greed, poverty, and even money itself. Captain Picard famously said in First Contact, "Money doesn't exist in the 24th century." And Captain Kirk once claimed that people in their time work to improve themselves, not for wealth. It sounds perfect, but if you pay close attention, you'll notice that money, or at least some kind of currency, never really disappeared. In the original series, Kirk once told Scotty he'd earned his pay for the week. That line might seem out of place in a world without money. It could have been a figure of speech or just a leftover habit of language, but it hints that things might not be as clear as they seem. Within the Federation, it's true that most basic needs are taken care of. Food, housing, healthcare, and education are free, thanks to replicators and advanced technology. People aren't driven by profit, but by curiosity, learning, and service. It's an inspiring idea, but outside the Federation, or even just off Earth, it's a different story. Federation citizens still use credits for certain things. On Deep Space Nine, characters use credits at Quark's bar or to access holosuites. When dealing with alien species like the Ferengi, who are obsessed with gold-pressed latinum, humans need something to trade. Other species like the Romulans and Klingons also have their own economies. Which Star Trek detail surprised you the most once you learned the truth behind it? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more.